Sutavacha
कृष्ण एवं भगवती
Krishna
कृष्ण
evam
एवं भगवती
मनोवागदृष्टिवृत्तिभिः
Manovadrishti
मनोवागदृष्टिवृत्तिभिः
आत्मनि आत्मनाम् अवेश्य
Atmani
आत्मनि
Atmanam
आत्मना आवेश्य
सो सोन्नतः श्वास उपारमात्
Sonatva
सोऽन्नतः श्वास उपारम
Translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada. Suta Goswami said, Thus Bhishma Dev merged himself in the Supersoul, Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with his mind, speech, sight, and actions, and thus he became silent and his breathing stopped. Purport. The stage attained by Bhishma Dev while quitting his material body is called Nirvikalpa Samadhi because he merged his self into thinking of the Lord and his mind into remembering his different activities. He chanted the glories of the Lord, and by his sight, he began to see the Lord personally present before him. And thus, all his activities became concentrated upon the Lord without deviation. This is the highest stage of perfection, and it is possible for everyone to attain this stage by practice of devotional service. The devotional service of the Lord consists of 9 principles of service activities, and they are hearing, chanting, remembering, serving the lotus feet, worshipping, praying, executing orders, fraternizing, and fully surrendering. Any one of them or all of them are equally competent to award the desired result, but they are required to be practiced persistently under the guidance of an expert devotee of the Lord. The first item, hearing, is the most important item of all. And therefore, hearing the Bhagavad Gita and later on Srimad Bhagavatam is essential for the serious candidate who wants to attain the stage of Bhishma Dev at the end. The unique situation at Bhishma Dev's time of death can be attained even though Lord Krishna may not be personally present. His words of the Bhagavad Gita or those of Srimad Bhagavatam are identical with the Lord. They are sound incarnations of the Lord, and one can fully utilize them to be entitled to attain the stage of Sri Bhishma Deva, who was one of the 8 Vasus. Every man or animal must die at a certain stage of life. But one who dies like Bhishma Dev attains perfection, and one who dies forced by the laws of nature dies like an animal. That is the difference between a man and an animal. The human form of life is especially meant for dying like Bhishma Dev. Hare Krishna. So beautiful purport. Um, Hare Krishna. Am I still audible?
Yes, Prabhuji, you're audible.
Oh, okay. I don't know where my screen went, but anyways, uh, so in this one, I can't see the screen anymore. I'll come back to it later on. But anyways, so in this, Srila Prabhupada is in Sutta Uvacha, right? So Sutta Goswami is saying in this that how what is the perfection of human life, and the way Bhishma Dev died, that is one of the goals we should have for this human life. A lot of people at we think about that, they don't really know what is the goal of their life. If you ask them, a lot of people are just you know either they do not know the goal of the life and are trying to find a goal, or they know the wrong goal or are pursuing a goal that is not really meant for this human life. So the complete perfection is to be in a stage of mind at the time of death. And what state of mind? And that state of mind in which Bhishma Dev was. And it starts off in describing that stage in which Bhishma Dev was, which is called as Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So Nirvikalpa Samadhi is completely being absorbed in Krishna by sight, by mind, by thoughts, everything into Krishna. And Bhishma Dev, at his time of death, he was able to look at Lord Sri Krishna in person himself, which is the highest perfection. But it is said that even we can achieve by devotional service, by the Navda 9 processes of properly devotional service, of devotional, uh, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. So those nine processes, if we do them perfectly, or even one of them is done perfectly, then one can reach this type of samadhi when you are completely absorbed in the thoughts of the Lord at the time of death. And by that, even though Lord Krishna may not be personally present, but he can be present. Lord Krishna is non-different from his name, as well as Srimad Bhagavad Gita, his words, which is Bhagavad Gita, or Srimad Bhagavatam, which talks about his glories. So any of these things being present in our mind, in our thoughts, in our activities in every way at the time of death would be the perfection of life, of this human form of life. Otherwise, says anybody dying without these things in their mind at the time of death, if they're thinking of other things, in Hindi movies, they always show at the time of death, the person is trying to write the last letter of the will or something, and there are ads like advertisements like that. If such a person, if still at the time of death is completely engrossed in the worldly activities, and we know by practical experience, so many people, millions of people have been there before us, and so many more will come again after us. So what is special in us and our life, or how can we make this life special that it will really make a difference to our soul? Right? So many, जैसे कहते हैं ना, कितने आए कितने गए. So there are so many great personalities in the material world who came and went, but that is not really unless they were spiritually advanced, unless they were thinking of the Supreme Lord at the time of death, it is a waste of that life, that human form of life, because they didn't do what this human form of life is ultimately made for. So the highest perfection that we should try for and try to achieve should be this kind of death, where we can remember the Lord at the time of death. And it is very difficult. It's said that it's like biting off 1,000 scorpions, 1,000 or million, I don't remember that number, it's in Bhagavatam. So many scorpions biting you, and that much pain is that we get at the time of death, when the soul is separating from the body. So at that time, it is much more likely that throughout this life, what we have been doing, we are going to remember those things, the people we have been attached to, the thoughts we have been having. If all the time we are thinking about our worldly activities, then at the time of death also, it is very improbable that we will be able to remember Krishna at that time. So what we can do is we can keep trying and try our best, and then hope that that if not perfection, we can reach a state in which we can at least over few lifetimes be able to achieve Krishna. But ideal would be, at least the goal should be the highest, that we should try to achieve the Supreme Personality, Godhead, in this lifetime itself. And it is said it can be only done under the guidance of elite, the parampara, and unless we follow the Guru and parampara, that is not possible. So Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, devotees, kindly correct me or from what I added or what realizations you had from this shloka or any other thoughts that come to your mind. Please share. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu, for sharing. Any other devotee would like to share anything? Go forward. Any volunteers who would like to recite? Yes.
I can try, Prabhuji.
Let's go ahead.
Sampadyamanam agyanya
Sampadyamanam
Yamanam ajnana
naya Bhishmam Brahmani Bhishmam Brahmani Nishkale
Yishmam Brahmani Nishkale
Sarve Babhuvuaste Tushnim
Sarve Babhuvaste Tushnim
Vayam Siva Dinatyaye.
Vayam Siva Dinatyaye.
Translation. Knowing that Bhishmadeva had merged into the unlimited eternity of the Supreme Absolute, all present there became silent like birds at the end of the day. Purport. To enter into or to become merged into the unlimited eternity of the Supreme Absolute means to enter the original home of the living being. The living beings are all component parts and parcel of the absolute personality of Godhead, and therefore they are eternally related with Him as the servitor and the served. The Lord is served by all His parts and parcels, and as the complete machine is served by its parts and parcels. Any part of the machine removed from the whole is no longer important. Similarly, any part and parcel of the Absolute detached from the service of the Lord is useless. The living beings who are in the material world are all disintegrated parts and parcel of the Supreme Whole, and they are no longer as important as the original parts and parcels. There are, however, more integrated living beings who are eternally liberated. The material energy of the Lord, called Durga Shakti, or the superintendent of the prison house, takes charge of the disintegrated parts and parcels, and thus they undergo a conditioned life under the laws of material nature. When the living being becomes conscious of this fact, he tries to go back home, back to Godhead, and thus the spiritual urge of the living being begins. The spiritual urge is called Brahma Jigyasa, or inquiry about Brahman. Principally, this Brahma Jigyasa is successful by knowledge, renunciation, and devotional service of the Lord. Jnana or knowledge means knowledge of everything of Brahman, the Supreme. Renunciation means detachment of material affection, and devotional service is the revival by practice of the original position of the living being. The successful living beings who are eligible to enter into the realm of the Absolute are called Jnanis, the Yogis, and Bhaktas. The Jnanis and Yogis enter into the impersonal rays of the Supreme, but the Bhaktas enter into the spiritual planets known as the Vaikunthas. In these spiritual planets, the Supreme Lord as Narayana predominates, and the healthy, unconditioned living being live there by rendering loving service to the Lord in the capacity of servant, friend, parent, and fiancé. There, the unconditional living being enjoy life in full freedom with the Lord, whereas the impersonalists, jnanis, and yogis enter into the impersonal glowing effulgence of the Vaikuntha planets. The Vaikuntha planets are all self-illuminating like the sun, and the rays of the Vaikuntha planets are called Brahma Jyoti. The Brahma Jyoti is spread unlimitedly, and the material world is but a covered portion of an insignificant part of the same Brahma Jyoti. This covering is temporary, and therefore it is a sort of illusion. So, okay, I'll read. Vishnu as a pure devotee of the Lord, entered the spiritual realm in one of the Vaikuntha's planets, where the Lord, in his eternal form of Parthasarthi, predominates over the unconditioned living being who are constantly engaged in the service of the Lord. The love and affection which bind the Lord and the devotee are exhibited in the case of Bhishma. Bhishmadev never forgot the Lord in his transcendental feature as the Parthasarthi, and the Lord was present personally before Bhishmadeva while he was passing to the transcendental world. That is the highest perfection of life. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Aditi. Thank you for reading. You want to explain?
Prabhuji, the first paragraph is actually self-explanatory, and Prabhupada is actually trying to say that uh, until we are detached from the Lord, because uh, we are the part and parcel of the Lord. Like if any part of the machine is detached from the machine, that part becomes useless. So the same way, until we don't have this urge to realize our uh, true position, that who we are, like we are the part and parcel of Lord, till that time we are also useless. So so this living being and the material, yeah, and then a world are disintegrated parts and parcel of the supreme whole, and they are no longer important as the original parts. And Prabhupada is saying that there are, however, more integrated living beings who are eternally liberated. So these integrated living beings are the pure devotees. They are eternally liberated. The material energy of the Lord is called Durga Shakti. It would take care of this material world. The material world is like a prison. You have explained in past that how the external energy of the Lord, material energy of the Lord, Durga Shakti, take cares of this material world, which is like a prison for us. So we come here by to we do the karmas, and then to being and then we take a birth in this material world, and to bear the fruits of our karmas, we come in this material world. And then in this material world, it's like a prison, and then it's been taken care by the Durga Shakti, which is the material energy of the Lord. And once, until we realize that we are true position and we want to go back to the Godhead, till that time we stay here. But that urge of this spirit, of this of knowing that who we are, and we want to and then when we get to know about this, and then we want to go back to the Godhead, this urge is called Jigyasa, that we want to inquire about the Brahman, we want to inquire about the um, about the Paramatma, the Supreme Lord, that who He is and why we are here, and to know about that connection with the Lord. That is called Brahma Jigyasa. And so here Prabhupada saying that principally this Brahma Jigyasa is successful by knowledge. So until we get this, so this Brahma Jigyasa is about the knowledge about the Lord, about our relation with the Lord, and the renunciation and devotional service to the Lord. Jnana or knowledge means knowledge of everything of Brahman. And the renunciation means detachment from the material affection. And the devotional service is the revival by practice of original position. So the devotional service is nothing but a practice of loving Lord every day, of the revival of the living being, of the original position. So the more we practice this bhakti yoga, the more we practice the bhakti, the more we get to know about the Lord, and the more we get to know about the Lord, we become attached to the Lord, and then we actually realize our true position, that who we are, what is our true position, why we are lost in this material world. So that Brahma Jigyasa is very important. That's the first step towards a Supreme Lord. And then Prabhupada is saying that the successful living beings who are eligible to enter into the realm of the Absolute are called Gyanis, Yogis, and Bhaktas. So Gyanis and Yogis, actually, they enter into the impersonal Brahman. And the Bhaktas, because they practice the Bhakti Yoga, they are directly eligible for the Vaikuntha planets, for the Golok Vrindavan. But the Gyanis and Yogis, because they more focus on this, practice on the impersonal Brahman, so they go back to some planets, but they don't go to the Vaikuntha planets. But the Bhaktas go to the Vaikuntha planets. And these other planets, even the Brahma Loka, Chandra Loka, I was reading somewhere, please correct me Prabhuji if I'm wrong, that they also annihilate with the Brahmaji's lifespan. So nothing is eternal except the Vaikuntha planets. So like the Brahma's life, when his yuga, those yugas, his life, his day and night actually finishes, then this whole material world is annihilated. So these yogis and jnanis, those who try to enter into the Brahman, impersonal Brahman, they also actually come back to the planet after all these, their karmas or their good karmas, their fruit is consumed actually. So, but the bhaktas, because they're always engaged and they have no other purpose of knowing the Lord except realizing the true position or loving the Lord. So they directly go to the Vaikunthas. And the one who reaches there once and realizes Krishna is the Supreme Lord, he never comes back. This is mentioned in 8th chapter. And but these jnanis and yogis, after that life, those years are consumed, their karmas, their good karmas are consumed, and they come back to the earthly planets, and they cannot enter the Vaikuntha planet until they practice the bhakti yoga. But they are very much eligible because they practice Ashtanga yoga and they read the Shastras and Vedas, so they know about the Brahman Jyoti, because that's effulgence of Lord. But because they have to realize the Lord as Paramatma, they have to realize the Lord as Bhagavan. Until they go to realize this Bhagavan realization, they cannot go to the Vaikuntha planets. And in that Vaikuntha planet, the Supreme Lord as Narayana predominates. And the healthy, unconditioned living beings live there by rendering loving service to the Lord in the capacity of Dasya, Sakhya, Madhurya, and Vatsalya. And they are unconditional living being, enjoy life in full freedom with the Lord. So because when you are with the Lord, you have the full freedom because you are not in the material world. And then there is no this pain of birth and death and other relation or other suffering. That is not Dukhalayam Shashvatam, that is actually Sukhalayam. So the true Sukh you get there with the Lord. So whereas, as I mentioned about the Gyanis, how they come back, and then the Prabhupada explained about the Brahma Jyoti. And Prabhuji, I have the question here. I could not understand this. And the material world is but a covered portion of an insignificant part of a same Brahma Jyoti. So the material world is a covered portion of a Brahma Jyoti. Is that? I got a little confused here, Prabhuji. And
So
this I could.
basically, everything is in light. The part which is covered, that is the material creation where we are in ignorance. Otherwise, everything is everywhere in the creation, people are in knowledge about Krishna as the Supreme Personality. But the area which is covered of that is the material universes. So it is a small portion. Majority is the spiritual world. Like majority part of the city is where normal people live, but then there is some part where there are people who live in the jail, right?
Yes, sir.
So jail has very few people who are not obedient. So like that. Anybody else would like to share any thoughts on this question Mataji asked?
So that is why Prabhuji, this material world is called like ignorance. Like people are ignored. People have ignorance. They are not aware about the existence of Lord, and they deny this. So that is why this is called material world, or is that I don't know. I'm not able to.
What is your question, Mataji?
So that is why Prabhuji, this material world is called that suffering because it is covered portion, and there is people don't know about the Lord and about their connection with the Lord. But other planets, this other than this Brahma Jyoti, other parts are every in all other planets. It's Krishna is accepted as the Supreme Lord. Does that mean?
So in the material world, what is there? All the other planets
People
have.
are Prabhuji under the influence of ignorance. They don't know
Yes.
about the Lord.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
Okay. Okay. And this actually reminds me, Prabhuji, recently I was listening to His Grace Gaurang Prabhu's lecture, and I don't know whether I shared. So in that Prabhuji, because they're too much about planets, so Prabhuji was sharing that one of the devotee in US, or maybe US or some other foreign country, he was actually distributing books. So he was a very good book distributor. So then he found out that some people are there are certain clubs where people are very interested about the UFOs and all these things. So he actually tried to join those groups and try to connect with the people, and then he found out some people's address, maybe those who were leading the groups or something. So he actually went to some of those devotees house, एंड जब वो ऐसे नॉक किया तो अंदर से जैसे वो बाहर निकल के आए तो दे शोड दैट बुक. प्रभु जी, इज देयर एनी बुक ऑफ प्रभुपाद दैट जर्नी टू planet higher planets, something like
Yeah,
that?
easy journey to easy.
Easy journey to planets. So
Journey.
then he used to show that books to those people, and they used to get very attracted. Okay, so they say, what is this book all about? So the devotee actually used to dress up like proper suit and all that, and used to wear wig. Otherwise तो वो पूरा shave करके, तो otherwise used to wear wig and used to go in that presentable manner, so they don't get like scared in first meeting. So they used to, oh, what is this book all about? So they used to say, the devotee used to say, this is all about the UFO. And so then, he used to sit with them and then explain about these books and all. तो कुछ लोग तो कन्विंस हो जाते थे, कुछ तो बिल्कुल भी कन्विंस नहीं होते थे. तो जो कन्विंस नहीं होते थे वो पूछते थे कि लेकिन वहां जो लोग रहते हैं वो कैसे दिखते हैं, and that time he used to take his wig off and then show that this is how people in the other planets look like. So Prabhupada sharing that it was, devotees can think of all these great ideas how to sell Prabhupada's book and, connect to the different people who are under ignorance and running after, these UFO stuff. So Prabhuji shared it. And then when he used to take his wig off, then people were like, oh, okay. So he used to say that this is how, people like me, मेरे जैसे लोग रहते हैं वहाँ पे. So he used to take his wig off. So it reminded me of that.
Yeah, Gaurang
Prabhuji
Prabhu
shared.
is he is
Yeah.
amazing.
Prabhuji.
Great. Anybody else would like to share any points?
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Mats.
I
The voice is not coming. Maybe the internet connection is not good.
the previous paragraph, I talked about Nirvikalpa. It's going to Golok Vrindavan. Here now. Hare Krishna.
Yes, we can hear you now. Yeah. The,
I was asking that the previous paragraph talked about Bhishma Dev thinking about and meditating upon Lord Krishna. So that is the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So there must be something Savikalpa Samadhi. Can you please tell me what is Savikalpa Samadhi? Sorry, am I audible?
Hare Krishna, Hare. Yes,
Am,
you're audible
am
in
I audible?
between, but yes, you're audible now. But in between, it was going. Where are you referring to, Andy? Where is it mentioned?
The last shloka that talked about Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Because Bhishma Dev, when he meditated upon the Lord at the time of leaving his body, that state is known as Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So I was asking that there must be something known as Savikalpa Samadhi also.
did you understand the Nirvikalpa Samadhi?
Yes, I think so. That when you meditate upon the God totally, and you have been uh, into bhakti through all the 9 processes of bhakti, and at the time of leaving the body, when you are totally absorbed into meditating upon the Lord, then that is Nirvikalpa Samadhi.
Okay,
That is what
wonderful.
I understood.
Then we don't need to know about anything else. That is the highest perfection.
Okay.
Hare Krishna. That this Nirvikalp Samadhi is the last stage of Samadhi from where there is no return. The other stages are temporary, the Savikalp or something else. They are the initial stage
Okay.
back to their original consciousness from there. So, but this is the highest stage of perfection, like Nirbhay Prabhu said. So, at the time of death, we don't want to come back to our ordinary consciousness.
Thank you.
Any volunteers who would like to read the next one?
I can read, Prabhuji.
Please go ahead, Mother.
Tatra Dundubhayo Nedur
Tatra Dundu Bhayonedur
Deva Manava Vadita
Deva Manava Vadita
Shashamsu Sadhavo Ragyam
Shashamshu Sadhavo Ragnam
Khat Petu Pushpa Vrishtaya.
Khatpetu Pushpa Vrishtayaha.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thereafter, both men and demigods sounded drums in honor, and the honest royal order commenced demonstrations of honor and respect, and from the sky fell showers of flowers. Can you scroll down, Prabhuji? Purport. Bhishma Deva was respected both by the human beings and by the demigods. The human beings live on Earth and similar other planets in the Bhur and Bhuvar group of planets. But the demigods live in the Swar or heavenly planets, and all of them knew Bhishma Deva as a great warrior and devotee of the Lord. As a Mahajan or authority, he was on the level of Brahma, Narada, and Shiva, although he was a human being. Qualification on a par with the great demigods is possible only on attainment of spiritual perfection. Thus, Bhishma Deva was known all over the universes, and during his time, interplanetary travel was effected by finer methods than the futile endeavors of mechanical spacecraft. When the distant planets of Bhishma Deva, all the inhabitants of the upper planets as well as of the earth dropped showers of flowers to show due respect to the departed great personality. This showering of flowers from heaven is a sign of recognition by great demigods, and it should never be compared to the decoration of a dead body. The body of Bhishma Deva lost its material effects due to being surcharged with spiritual realization, and thus the body was spiritualized, as when iron becomes red hot when in contact with fire. The body of a fully self-realized soul is not therefore accepted as material. Special ceremonies are observed for such spiritual bodies. The respect and recognition of Bhishma Deva are never to be imitated by artificial means, as it has become a fashion to observe the so-called Jayanti ceremony for any and every common man. According to authorized Shastras, such a Jayanti ceremony for an ordinary man, however exalted he may be materially, is an offense to the Lord, because Jayanti is reserved for the day when the Lord appears on the earth. Bhishma Deva was unique in his activities, and his passing away to the kingdom of God is also unique. Hare Krishna. Did it finish the purport, Prabhuji? Okay. So here in the translation, it is being said that when Bhishma Dev left the body, then all the demigods and men, they sounded drums in his honor, and the honest royal order comments demonstrations of honor, and then there were demonstrations of honor and respect for him, and flowers were showered by demigods from the sky. So basically all signs of respect to the great devotee of the Lord that had just left the material planet for the spiritual abode. And in the purport, Prabhupada is describing how these signs of respect, this kind of honor is, given to such great souls, such pure devotees of Lord, and such self-realized people, and how everybody knew about Bhishma Deva, even in other planets. He was on the same platform as actually demigods, even though he was here on the Bhulok and Bhuvar, on the Bhulok. But even then, he was on the same level as Brahma, Narada, or Shiva, although he was a human being. So Prabhupada is saying, as a Mahajan, he was on the level of, because they're also Mahajans, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Narad Muni, they're all Mahajans. So he was also, Bhishma Deva is also Mahajan. So it doesn't matter which planet they are, like Prahlad Maharaj is a Mahajan. So he's, doesn't matter which planet they are born on, they are all on the same spiritual platform because they have attained spiritual perfection. So he was known all over the various universes and different planets and different demigods and so many great sages and rishis and kings, and so many people had come at the time of his departure to honor him, to pay their respects to him. So so at that time they showered various, they showered flowers, horns were blown, various kind of respects and honors were paid to him. And Prabhupada is describing that this type of respect is reserved for such exalted souls, because they are spiritual even while being on material platform. Their body is completely spiritualized. And Prabhupada gives this analogy many times. We have read this analogy of iron becoming red hot when in contact with fire. So iron, when it is in the fire, it becomes red hot like fire itself. It can also burn, right? So similarly, the body of a pure devotee does not remain material anymore. It's not like that of a common man. It becomes spiritualized. And so for such spiritual bodies, special ceremonies are held. Like their samadhis made, their appearance is called Jayanti. And so we should not use the word Jayanti for any common man. I think we were discussing a few days back also that how it has become a trend to just honor normal common men, whether they're politicians or anybody, because they did great material work, which was good for the mankind, yes, but they're really, not devotees or have not attained any spiritual perfection. So it should be reserved for Lord or for his consorts of the Lord. And so Bhishma Dev was unique and a Mahajan, and so this kind of honor was due for him. And his passing away is the perfection of life that one should aspire for. So this was duly recognized by all the people and all demigods and everybody that was present there. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else would like to share?
Prabhuji, I just have a quick question. So the word Jayanti can be used for the devotees of the Lord too, right? Or is it just for Lord and his expansions and incarnations?
Generally, I have heard only about Lord.
Okay. Okay, I was confused because Prabhupada has mentioned this in the passing of Bhishma Dev.
He mentioned?
In the end, I mean, he's mentioning it in this paragraph where Bhishma Dev is passing. So I was wondering if it is used for like Bhishma Dev or other devotees also. But yes, we say Balram Jayanti or
As
so we don't use.
for devotees also?
Okay.
No, has he mentioned? I'm asking.
No, he has not, but he's just mentioned in this in the context of Bhishma Dev was passing. So I was confused.
Yeah, because like that anybody can say this is a devotee, right? I mean, even the days of Acharya's disappearance or appearance, for example, I have not seen anywhere that we write Jayanti word specifically, because even people can say, Gandhi Jayanti is because Gandhiji is a devotee. He says Hey Ram at his, whatever, at the time he left his body. So we are not necessarily seeing that his life he was dedicated necessarily to Bhagavad Gita or anything. He was definitely in the mode of goodness maybe, but still lot of other things could have been done which would have raised him from the platform of goodness to actually pure devotional service.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to share any thoughts on what we've discussed so far today?
So, Prabhuji, I have another question talking about Mahatma Gandhi. Just want to understand a little better. I know, so he remembered, he said, Hey Ram at the time of his death. Hard to say what, he was definitely in mode of goodness, as we can see from his work. And he did he did give commentary on Bhagavad Gita as well. So how do we say that he maybe he was working in a detached way and was he used to sing that bhajan all the time. So how can we like, if somebody asks me, it'll be, how do I explain that he's not a devotee, or how do we know what his personal
Yeah, that's why
standing was?
that's why I'm saying, to avoid such an argument, the word Jayanti is kept reserved for the Lord itself, Lord himself, I mean, not for anybody. And then on the other hand, we don't have to go around judging people who is not a devotee. But from our understanding, we can see if somebody is engaging in the 9 process of devotional service, like mentioned, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Archanam, Vandam, Vasudevam, Rasam, Sakam, Achmanam, then we can say, yes, that person is definitely, obviously, is engaged in these activities. If somebody is not engaged in those activities and they claim to be, whether they are devotees or not is between Krishna and themselves, but we are not too much inspired to necessarily, follow their recommendations. We have better teachers than them. But at the same time, they may be very great and advanced in their own way, and we don't have any reason to disrespect anybody. I think Nirbhay Prabhu is raising hands. He want to loudly share.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. The thought that was coming to my mind in this discussion was, as we always, like here also we just read that it has to be in the disciplic succession, or without guru and without without parampara, the knowledge is not complete. And in our, we have heard many times that unless the knowledge is coming from disciplic succession, it is difficult to accept it without that. So just like you were saying, Prabhuji, that we at least should, should not follow such people. That, and as you said, that they may be very advanced, and just like we don't judge any even other person, that we always are that's in Vaishnava etiquette, that we think everybody else to be more advanced in spiritual knowledge than us, and not judge anybody that ways, to avoid offenses, or unknowingly doing any offensive. But at the same time, we should not take prerna, or just not accept knowledge from them unless we know that they are in the right disciplic succession. So that is the what was coming to my mind, Prabhuji. So yeah, and such people are not even just anybody else. This is already somebody that we know is at least trying to understand Bhagavad Gita, and somebody who has written commentary on Bhagavad Gita. So we will consider them that they are going to be more advanced than us, but we don't need to get inspired by them because it's not in disciplic succession.
Yes, Prabhuji, that's a valid point. And then it also depends on the writings. Like I don't know how many devotees have read his Bhagavad Gita, but I had read some of his work, and it is written very nicely for somebody who has no idea about Bhagavad Gita, or for that matter, for just like a little philosophical titillation. But at the same time, it is actually not touching on the essence of Gita, and a lot of things are not even like explained or mentioned, or they are not actually hitting the point. Like a lot of Mayavadi touches there, and not even like, I won't say necessarily Mayavadi, but it is like more of a different perspective, not really accepting the teachings of Bhagavad Gita in the way it is given, and even saying that these are like instances which we can derive lessons from, but not really questioning historical significance or actual events. So something like that I felt, many years ago I read before reading Prabhupada's Gita. So it was from a different perspective. So from that also we can see how much this is, it wasn't giving too much evidences from other scriptures or any of that. Like we see Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita has word-to-word meaning, has translation, has evidences from other scriptures. It is so much more scholarly here. And that was just, more of a presentation of someone who is having a perspective after reading the Bhagavad Gita. And of course, many of it was talking more about, general things or morals or lessons which we can learn. So that also gives you an idea of how much the person who's writing is in knowledge or in connection with the essence of the various scriptures. Does it make sense?
Okay, yes, Prabhuji, thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think we've crossed our time for today. So we'll conclude. Thank you all the devotees for joining. Anybody would like to mention any points before we end? So today is special day of Ekadashi. So all devotees can utilize the time by chanting more. Any other devotees who completed 64 rounds today? I haven't done it myself, so I'm just asking because we have some overachievers, or I would say achievers. So anyone did 32 rounds?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Anita Mataji. Yes, Raksha Mataji, you're saying something?
Prabhuji, अभी 32 हुआ नहीं, 31 पे हूँ.
Mataji, your voice is breaking.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I was saying 32 नहीं हुआ, अभी 31 पे हूँ.
31, so almost one more to go. Great. So Raksha Mataji, Anita Mataji, anybody else? Anybody else trying to achieve 32 rounds today?
प्रभुजी मेरे 2 राउंड बचे हैं.
Oh, great. Excellent. So by Krishna's grace, I was off today, so I could do some chanting. And very nice to see also many devotees doing 32 rounds. And anybody who did less than 30 but did like 25, between 25 and 30? Okay, all right. So all the other devotees, they were able to do 16 rounds. How many devotees did 16 or planning to do 16 today?
Last year, February 2020, Zach started getting menacing phone calls.
The devotee.
They told him, "You are an infidel because you worked for Julia."
Okay, great. Thank you all the devotees. So we'll end it here. Shri Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai.